Fulfillment is clearly a critical piece to any business, especially e-commerce. And it's easy for it to become chaotic and inefficient and essentially result in a really poor customer experience, all of which means your business suffers and has less healthy growth. And so today, we're going to show you 6 ways to optimize your e-commerce fulfillment system. Let's jump in. All right, first, what are some signs that you need to optimize your fulfillment process, that it actually is in need of optimization? How do you know when to start doing this? Well, first, you should be doing it regularly. But here are some ways to know that you need to optimize right away as soon as possible. First, you're losing money on fulfillment. Or worse, you don't know if you're making or losing money on fulfillment services like shipping and handling and all that kind of stuff. And so you need to do a financial analysis and basically see if what you're charging for shipping and handling is what you're paying or what your expense is for shipping and handling. And those prices, remember, change over time. And so you need to be assessing this on a regular basis. You may be losing money and not knowing this. I actually had a friend who runs an e-commerce business that saved almost $1 million a year by just looking at this one time because they just didn't look at it often. And so maybe you review this quarterly. The second thing is customer experience is inconsistent. And so you might have complaints, you may have customer issues, you may have errors on orders, etc. If that rate is high, then you need to look into optimizing your fulfillment process. Next, your gross margins, your cost of goods are not at least 80%, which is 5 times you buy something for $1, you sell it for $5, and really it should be more like 10 times. And we go into this in other resources which we can link to, because margin is a key golden multiplier in e-commerce. But if your margins are not where they should be, this is one of the areas to look, because this can increase those margins. And then if it's hard to scale when you run sales or when sales come in at a higher rate and there's more chaos, that's something you should look at as well. And so what are the basic steps of a solid fulfillment process? What does it look like? Well, first, there's a clear process for fulfilling different orders, right? So you might have different types of orders. You might have custom orders. You might have obviously non-custom orders. You might have all kinds of other things. You might have orders where you need to include certain inserts and things like that. You need to have a clear process for all the different types of orders in SOPs. And we go into the value and how to create SOPs in other resources, which we'll link to, but that's important. Second is you need a consistent connection between your store, all your technology. So your store where it's sold, maybe that's Shopify Plus, and your fulfillment department, whatever that you decide to use there. We recommend ShipStation is really, really good for that mid-level business. And then maybe even over to your ERP if you're big enough to have an ERP, and your accounting system. So all those things have to be talking to each other. And if they're not talking to each other consistently and they're not integrated, then there's going to be a lot of inefficiency and a lot of mistakes that happen for no reason. It's easy enough to integrate all those things. Make sure that you have a quality SOP for everyone to follow. And so we can link to how to do that, but make sure that your fulfillment team has SOPs for all the different things that they have to do. Sometimes there's customizations, which you have to follow a certain different thing. It might be getting orders picked and packed, which is another thing. And then you want to create a great brand experience for the customer. And so that is another part of a successful fulfillment process, is making sure that the unboxing experience is really important. And we go into some of the details of how to create unboxing experiences that are really great in other resources, which we will link to. You also want to be tracking your orders, right? You want to make sure that the orders you shipped are tracked and that you use a good carrier so that you can let the customer check in on status. And if you're not using a platform like Shopify Plus or something like that does that, you should be doing that. There's no need to be doing that manually. And you want to use a good carrier that's consistent in delivering. And then you want to make sure that you're break even or you're making money on your shipping costs and your handling costs. And now these are things to look at even if you outsource your fulfillment, even if you use a 3PL, you want to be looking at these things because you want to make sure that they're following these things and that your connection with them is solid and consistent, and that you're not losing money unknowingly on fulfillment, using a 3PL. And so here are 6 strategies to optimize your fulfillment process. I'm going to go through each one. First one is in-house or outsourced. What should you do? And so we've talked about, this doesn't just pertain to if you insource fulfillment. The question here is, should you insource or outsource? We've talked about the pros and cons of this in other resources, which we can link to, but in essence, this is up to you and your brand to decide what exactly is right for you. But it's sort of like this. Essentially, you have to ask yourself, do you want a custom experience, right, that requires you to do it in-house? Or do you want a hands-off experience where you don't have to deal with that and you just want to send, orders come through and someone else handles those? Both are fine, but you have to choose which one. A great outsourced, 3PL can provide a lot of benefit to an early stage business because the consistency is there. They're professional, if you pick the right one, and it's easy on the business side because it's not complicated. And that's important, but they're more expensive. And so, and especially if you customize your shipment, if there's different inserts that you want to put in, those kind of things, that can get very expensive. And so you need to decide if that is okay as you scale. As you scale up, those expenses grow, and a lot of times you might want to start to insource some of that as you scale up. So that's the first thing. The second thing is connect your systems and teams. So I mentioned software integration and connections, but more importantly, you want to make sure your software is connected, of course, Shopify to ShipStation or whatever you use, to your ERP, QuickBooks, etc. But more importantly, you want to make sure that your teams are talking and are connected. And so you want to make sure your fulfillment team and your customer service team and your marketing team and your ops team are all talking to each other. And this can be as simple as a Slack channel where you guys are discussing things. These might be customer problems, etc. But for example, let's say marketing is running a promotion. You'll need to know in advance to potentially staff up your fulfillment or let your 3PL know that you're going to be running a promotion that might bring in a lot more sales, so that they can be ready for it. Customer service needs to understand what sale is running and needs to be able to communicate customer issues back to fulfillment, which is meant to improve our processes and our SOPs. And so that's kind of the other side of this. And so making sure your teams are talking is really, really important when it comes to an efficient and successful fulfillment system. Third, you should have clear SOPs. And so standard operating procedures and how to create them is something that we've discussed in detail. And so we can link to those, but it is critical for consistency, and consistency avoids mistakes, and mistakes in fulfillment can be costly if they happen all the time because they degrade the customer experience, and they also cost you when it comes to returns and customer service inquiries and all those kind of things. And so avoiding mistakes is important, and the way you do that is by SOPs. And so you have to ask yourself, are you customizing orders? What is the process for that? Do you have quality control before packing? Oftentimes, your fulfillment team should be able to look at the product. You may have bought it from the manufacturer, but look at the product and make sure that it's not defective before they pack it, right? Because if you can avoid that beforehand, then you get a lot more success, and it costs you a lot less with the returns and customer experience that I just mentioned. And then, make sure your warehouse staff knows how to use the software correctly and update things in Shopify or in other places to make sure that customers get their notifications and those kind of things correctly. And so an SOP needs to be created for that. Next thing, number 4, is how do you handle returns and refunds? You have to have a way to accept returns and process returns, right? You have to have an SOP, obviously, here for how to do that. You can also use software like Returnly, and there's other software that help get the return process started and going. You have to ask yourself, do you restock items that are returned? Do you do any refurbishment of them before you restock them? So that you can make sure that as much as possible, your products are resellable. Number 5, be aware of your packing materials. And so packing materials and the cost to ship are a huge part of the cost of goods to sell, right? And that is a critical part of your product margin. And so making sure that you can dial this in so that you have a great customer experience, but you can be efficient with what you're actually spending here is really important. So there's a balance, right? Ask yourself the question, will a bubble mailer work instead of a box? Does this insert that we put in, is it needed or is it not? Just making sure it's efficient and making sure that you're assessing that constantly is critical. And all those little things kind of add up to big things. And I would look at these things corporately. Number 6, the last thing is measure. And so let's put some metrics in place that allow us to quickly tap into the health of our fulfillment system. How is it doing? We have to be able to judge the quality. And so this might be, orders made versus orders fulfilled per day. This might be your return rate. This might be customer service inquiries based on, you can filter based on tag. Have these metrics in place, populate a dashboard with them, and assess them on a daily, weekly basis, depending on how much volume you do, to make sure that your fulfillment is running efficiently, is actually helping your business, and doesn't need to be optimized, so that you're actually increasing your profit. And we've gone into profit a ton in other resources, which we'll link to, but that is critical, and fulfillment is one of the top items for actually increasing profit in your business. So listen, a well-oiled fulfillment department that's efficient and consistent is a critical piece to any e-commerce business. And it really actually hits the bottom line more than anything else. And that's the one that matters. So, but it's not as glamorous as some of the marketing things and other things. So it's easy to ignore it or not optimize it regularly. What I want you to do is be assessing and optimizing this regularly so that you can have a healthy, growing e-commerce business. And speaking of that, that's what we do. Our goal is to help e-commerce businesses grow in healthy ways. And that's what we've been doing for 10 plus years, scaling e-commerce businesses in healthy ways. So if you're currently a 6, 7, or 8 figure e-commerce business and need help scaling through the next milestone, we can help. Reach out to us. Thanks a lot.